Okay everyone, welcome back to another video on the channel. Today we're back on GT Sport and we're back for the FIA Nations Round 1. As you can see, this was my first attempt. Straight away we qualified P6 and we had a bug at the start of the race. Now this is really not good enough from Polyphony. They need to get their act together and sort these issues out, because look at the situation now. Myself, P5 and P7 ended up losing a lot of positions, because look at the cars that were behind us. They ended up obviously getting a better run out of the straight due to the fact that we had to stop for no reason at all. There wasn't even a car in front. It was just the game decided to stop P6, I think, or P5, so it was. And then everyone just drove so chaotic into turn 1. Just look at this. People diving in, ramming into each other. And I mean, there was a car, that Ferrari A50 just went driving through the chicane as if no one was there. It was really messy and not very good to see. So a little bit of a disaster in race 1. Didn't go too well. Put me in a bad mood for race 1. So we moved on to the second race. We'll have a little look now at the situation where people dived in on turn 1 now. As you see, the green TX3 driver there in the Toyota just missed it. I think he missed his braking and he had to go up the inside, completely missed the corner and just sideswiped into the Ferrari. And then another Ferrari just comes straight through there, you see, just pushing his way through. A really messy start. However, we then went on to race number 2. Started and totally messed qualifying up. I mean, it was probably the worst qualifying I've done in an FIA race in a very, very long time. I should have really been in the top 4, I think, top 4 or 5, if I would have hooked a lap up. However, this gave the opportunity to try and make up for it in the race. We've got 9 laps to try and get some sort of recovery drive and fight back through the field and get a result out of this, because we only picked up 1,300 points in the first race. Obviously, I jumped on fairly late, didn't have any time to practice the day before, so these were our first races. A lot of people would race the day before and raced all through the day. We just jumped on at the 8 o'clock race and then did the 9 o'clock race. You can see going into turn 1, I seen that P9 and P10 went very narrow in to try and make a move on P9, so I went around the outside, managed to get a good exit. Had to be very careful on the powers. We started to get a little bit of traction loss, but managed to hold it around the outside and gain a position straight away, which put me up into P10, which was nice. You know, to get a move done that early on within the first corners, it really does give you a lot of motivation to keep on pushing. As we check out the replay camera from the TV replay, as we're trying to chase down this Ford GT now in front of us, we've got a little bit of a gap to them, and then we've got obviously 9 other cars ahead of them, pushing really hard. You can see I do love watching the replay cameras from these views, especially in these dust settings when it's really low light. You've got the lights on the cars, and especially in road cars, it really does look good, with no liveries on the cars, just obviously the number for your nations, your rank in the races. We see the F40 there running very wide onto the gravel and nearly losing control. Now we're going into the braking zone, and I spotted in the mirror, you see there, the black F50 totally missed his braking and dived up the inside. Now I spotted that and gave him the space, and then just undercut and took that position back, and he tapped into the wall, but it wasn't deliberate. I think he actually gave a little flash to apologise. It was just the fact that I think he missed his braking and had to turn it into an overtaking move, because if he didn't, he would have gone straight into the back of me. So he did the right thing. As another car there into the wall of death, we all worry about that wall every time we come anywhere near it. So that's one victim down from there already, and we're now up into P9 already, and we're only on lap 1. We haven't even gone over the line to start lap 2 yet. You can see the cars in front, a lot of battling going on. We've got Matty278 there in front of us, a very fast driver in the Ford GT, and some other drivers there. You've got GTP Twizy in P3 and Matthias Cullen there in P1. So some very fast drivers ahead. We're quite far behind P1 at this stage. Obviously, starting from P11, you do lose quite a bit of time. I think we're about 5 seconds down at this point of the race. And we're just going to try and pick up the slipstream. The slipstream, obviously, on weak setting is really important to try and get as close as possible. If you're within 4 or 5 attempts, you pick up such a big draft, especially when you're in a group of, say, 3 cars. But we're a little bit outside at the moment. We really need to push on forward and try and make up some more places in this race. As we go into the right hand corner, trying to get on the power as early as possible. As we come out the corner, you see from the replay camera again, very close racing going on, and some reasonably clean race. This was a much cleaner race than obviously the first attempt. The first attempt was a bit of a disaster, and that camera angle looks absolutely amazing on GT. As we go through the really fast sweeping corners, the Ford GT very strong through this section. It was able to take quite a tight line and really stay on the power a lot through there. I did notice it when we were following another GT. later on in the race. But you can see there Matty going for the move around the outside, has gone around the outside of the Ford F50, so I spotted that, realised that he wasn't going to be able to take an early apex, so I decided to cut in early onto the apex, get on the power as early as possible and try and go side by side and give myself the line into the wall of death, as we call it. But then P8 actually lost control of his car. He gave me a little flash to apologise for that. He lost control on the curb getting on the power, and I actually saved him. Lucky for him, he hit the side of my car. No one picked up a penalty, thankfully. Hopefully they've done something with the penalty system for side contact penalties, because I think a few weeks ago that would have been a penalty, but maybe on the update they've resolved that issue with getting rid of side contact penalties, because there was no penalty given in that situation. But now we're up into P8 already, starting only on 2 laps done, so great progress so far, but it's going to get harder and harder as we make our way forward with the pace of the drivers up ahead. 2,400 points were up at stake for this race. It was a final race of the day. Everyone obviously, this is the race that everyone needs to try and get a good result from. As Matty in front of us, we're going to be able to get a slipstream. I decided to tuck back in the slipstream there, then pull out to the left and just try and brake a little bit later. He stays wide. Matty, a very respectful driver, giving me the space on the inside there, and then I just tuck in, and then he's just going to tuck in behind us and get in our slipstream. So another position gained and into P7 already, so a pretty much perfect start to this race. And now we've got, obviously, you can see there IA racing there up ahead. We was behind them at the start of the race, I think it was, but we lost quite a bit of time when the driver that was behind us missed his braking and we had to back out the corner. But now we can set about trying to catch P6 up and gain some time on him and see if we can get that position. It is going to be difficult now. You can see that the gap between myself and P6 is very similar to the gap between himself and P5. So we're both probably picking up a very similar type of slipstream from each other. So it's just going to be about who's going to be able to put in the better lap times to get as close as possible to each other. So far, this race went much better. The first race was a disaster from start to finish. As we jump on board back into the cockpit camera, if you want to watch out the race as it happened in live from the gameplay footage that I use, obviously the bumper camera, you can check out the live stream from this race. It's on there. It was a really enjoyable race, as you can see now, trying to chase down P6 while trying to be very careful through that chicane. It's scary. Every time you go through there, it's very scary, especially with this F40. It tended to understeer on the entry before you got to the wall, and then it kind of, I was going for an early apex and I actually made it work, started to make it work in this race. My line through there and through the final corner, you've got to be very careful on the front. You can see a little bit of oversteer kicking in there as we try and get on the power really early to try and get into that slipstream. You can see that Matty behind us is dropping back a little bit. He's still picking up the slipstream, very similar to how I'm picking up the slipstream from P6. So now hopefully we can all start gaining in on the leaders, although P6 hasn't got really that much of a slipstream to P5. So it's a very similar situation between myself and the driver in front with the slipstream we're receiving. So the drivers in front of that seem to be a little bit closer together, so picking up probably more of a draft. I'd say that obviously P4 there looks like he's picking up the biggest draft and probably getting the biggest gains down the straight, but we're now just trying to hold on and make some progress to get as close as possible to P6. As it seemed like the Ford was very good through the fast corners up ahead. You're going to see now as IA racing, as we go up the hill, the F50 seemed to have it was really strange. Sometimes you felt like you had more top speed, but then other times it felt like the Ford had better. I think some of it was to do with the gear changing as well on that Ford, whether you really hooked up the perfect revs for changing the gear. It could have been something to do with that. As I think when I overtook Matty, I think he might have made a little bit of a gear changing error, because coming out the corner it looked like we gained quite a big advantage compared to how we're gaining on IA racing. So maybe he misshifted the gear, or maybe shifted a little bit too early or late or something. But as we're now going into the braking zone, a very tricky braking zone this. You've got to brake midway between the 200 and the 150. I like to brake midway because it just enables you to hook up the apex a little bit better, rather than risking braking closer to that 150 and running wide through the corner. But now you see everyone trying to skim the wall there. I was not really doing that. I was trying to avoid skimming the wall with this Ferrari, because sometimes when I did that I felt like it was bouncing me off and it was just making me miss the apex into the corner a bit. So we're trying to do it as safe as possible with as little risk. So maybe not pushing as hard as I could through that chicane, but I think the best way to do that was just trying to be safe. As we go for that early apex again, the Ford in front of me tended to go very wide out that corner and then try and get on the power, obviously from a wider angle. I like to go very tight through there and keep it narrow and just try and get on the power as early as possible and then deal with the oversteer as we come out. But it seems to be working with me. We definitely have gained a bit on P6 at this stage. As you can see, the lap times have been very good so far. We've, at this point, I think we had the fastest lap of the race, even though we did an overtake in it and we didn't quite hook up the last chicane at the end of the lap. I think we didn't really push too hard through there and maybe lost a little bit of time, but still not a bad lap of 59.0, over a second quicker than what we did in qualifying. So the qualifying really didn't go very well. Every single lap in this race you're going to see was faster than my qualifying lap. I think our qualifying lap was over 2 minutes because we hit the wall on the lap that counted, and you can see it was just a disaster, an absolute disaster. Really should have been started in the top 4 or 5 places. I think that would have given me the position to really push for a podium, but unfortunately starting from P11 it was just about limiting the damage and trying to fight back and get some sort of result out of this race. As you can see, keeping it really consistent at the moment and driving really well. You can see we've actually pulled away from P8 and built a bit of a gap up now, so I can just concentrate on the driver in front and see if I can get myself into that top 6 position and recover some sort of points. P6 would have been a better point scoring for me than the first race, because the first race was a bit of a disaster, and this race was actually higher rated in terms of points. Obviously a lot of people trying to do it for their final chance to improve their points and try and get that little bit better points out of this Nations Championship round 1. As we go through the chicane, you can see everyone pushing quite hard through there, getting very close to the wall, actually skimming the wall on the exit there. I did maybe lost a little bit of time, but once you pick that slipstream back up, it's not too bad as long as you don't hit it too hard. As we now go into the final corner, trying to get a solid exit from this final corner to pick up the slipstream off that Ford GT. I really did enjoy this round, I have to say. Like, road cars is probably my weaker car. In qualifying it, I had more potential, I just didn't hook it up. But in the race here, I was really improving and getting faster, and just the consistency was there. Again, another 59.0. The consistency was so good all the way through the race. I was actually really impressed with my driving in this race, considering that road cars are not my favourite. But this F50 is such a joy to drive. Really nice when you're dropping the power down and putting it into this N300 class. It really suits it, and I had great fun driving it. And it's quite good to race these races sometimes as well, these road car races. Although you are at a disadvantage without the shift there, it's just something different, and these are the races I need to practice anyway. If I eventually, I may not make it to the regional finals, it's going to be extremely hard to make it into the next official FIA season. I think there's a lot of fast drivers coming from other games, extremely from Forza, from a lot of other drivers from even, I think it's the F1 games have been coming on to GT Sport recently. So it's going to be very competitive, and it's going to be a real struggle to try and make it through. We'll do our best and try our best, and if I do make it through, I need to start practicing cars like this, because they do tend to like using a lot of the road cars, and it's going to be needed to get myself up to speed to make at least I'm a bit competitive. So that's why I chose to do this round. Didn't do the manufacturers. I'm not that big a fan of the track. I need to learn it properly. I will be learning, obviously, that track. I have done that track before. I'm just not a big fan of it, to be honest. So I decided not to do that. I think we're going to do round 2 of the Nations only as well at Bathurst in Group 3, as I do like that combination, and I want to try and pick up some good points there as we now chase down P6 IA Racing there. You can see we're definitely getting closer. We're reeling them in so this was just a case of being patient, being very patient in how much you're gaining on him every lap. You can't push too hard because he's getting the slipstream as well from P5, but I am gaining, and this was really good to see because I could see that the cars in front were getting closer. We've actually gained on the leader from the start of the race. I think we were over 5 seconds behind at the start of the race, and now we're within about 4 seconds behind. So the race so far is going really well, and we're picking up a big slipstream now from IA Racing, very similar to how we did with Matty. You can see I'm going to tuck in, have a little look up the inside, but it was a little bit too far back, and I decided not to risk that there. I decided to just hold on behind him and just stick in the slipstream for now. There was no point throwing it up the inside there. I felt it was going to be a better idea to try and wait till the final corner, because I did notice he was taking a very wide line into that final corner. So the aim was to try and get in his slipstream as we get into that final corner and make a move, maybe on the inside. As we go now onto this right hand corner, trying to make sure we don't run too far wide on the power. Really nicely there, and this is what I needed to do: stay very close to the slipstream and just put him under pressure and pick up as much of a draft as possible as we go into this fast left-hand corner. This is a corner where the Ford seems to be very strong. You can see able to carry a lot of speed and bounce over them curves without any sort of issue in terms of disturbing the car as we go through the left-hand corner. And again, he seems to pull away through there, but luckily I did that really well, even though I was in the dirty air, and still picking up the slipstream as we go into the braking zone for the very, very scary part of the track. This is the part of the track where it can catch out anyone as we go very nicely through there on the power really early and really close now to iRacing. And actually, this is not where I like being. With the view I normally, obviously, when I'm racing on the gameplay, the real gameplay, when we're live streaming, we're on the bumper camera, so you can't really see much. You can see I actually backed off through there and try and take a better line. However, P6 goes in there too strong and actually nearly loses the rear end. And this gives me the opportunity to go on the inside now and make a move into the final corner. And we're going to be able to do that, as you see, going side by side. A little bit of contact there. I think he turned in a little bit early. We're going to brake as late as possible to try and stop him going too, trying to undercut us. And he actually turned into me, and he wasn't very happy with that. We gave him plenty of space on the left hand side, although he wasn't very happy with that. It was a perfectly clean move. He didn't like it. He was flashing me through the straight, but I feel like that was a perfectly clean, perfectly safe move. We gave him plenty of space on the left hand side, and I was perfectly within my right there to brake as late as possible, as long as we gave him more than the car's width, which we did do, and made a very nice move to put myself up into P6. So now we've got to see if we can catch up to P5, although P5 seems to be driving very well. We have obviously gained on him since the overtake. Before the overtake we were a good few seconds behind. You can see now we're just over, maybe about a second, just over a second behind, and we're in the slipstream. So now we just got to try and hold on really. I think at this stage of the race I was quite happy with just coming back home in P6, because from starting from P11 we've gained 5 positions and we've had a really good solid race, and we'd go through there with a very fast sector split. You can see there a purple sector at this stage race into the 39s in the race condition, which was very fast. I really was in the zone at this point, and I was trying to push to see if we can gain onto P5, but I think P5 also pushing very hard to try and make sure that he doesn't lose that position to myself as we go into the last few laps. We're now on lap 8 and we got one more lap after we complete this lap. As you can see behind me, the Ford GT seems to be close, but it doesn't seem, I mean, he took a very tight line through there, trying to obviously pick up the slipstream. I went for the wide line to get a better exit speed, although that Ford GT is very close now as we go through to the very tricky and scary corner. Again, going through here very close together, trying to really hook this up, and I actually nailed that one quite well and took a lot of speed through there, and actually pulled away from the Ford GT and give myself a little bit of a cushion as we go into the final corner. Now you're going to see two very different lines. I go very wide here to try and increase the exit speed, because this is the only real overtaking opportunity he's going to get. So I go very wide, he goes very narrow because he wants to pick up the slipstream, although I want to get a better exit speed to try and defend against him as we go into turn 1. And it actually looks like it's worked out. You can see in the mirror he doesn't seem to be close enough. He hasn't really picked up the exit speed with that very tight line that he's took. And again, we go over the line with another very consistent lap of 1 minute 59.1. Every single lap in this race has been better than what we managed in qualifying, so it really does emphasise how poor that qualifying was as we go through the chicane and trying to just be very patient on the throttle. You can lose the rear through here. You can see a little bit of oversteer, managed to correct that straight away, and we now just got to keep this consistent and try and bring it home in a quite a satisfying P6, to be honest, starting from P11. Fighting our way through, doing some good overtakes, some moves that we got a bit of luck with. You know, some drivers, I think one driver made a mistake on the chicane of death where he hit the wall, but now we just got to keep at this now and bring it home into P6. You can see the drivers up, look how close the racing is, and this is the type of racing I really enjoy. You know, P1 is just up the road, you've got P2, 3, 4 all very close, P5 just maybe a second behind them, and now myself closing in and another second behind P5. You know, this is really good racing. This is why you know, we all play GT Sport, for races like this where it's clean. Everything's been clean so far, but it looks like P2 made a mistake and has actually lost out to myself there, and he's lost from P2 down to P6. So a disaster for Win Stephen there, as he's made a mistake when I think he actually lost control through the fast left-hander, ran a bit wide, lost the rear. So now I've just got to make sure I hook this corner up, because P5, I would have took that at the start of the race after that poor qualifying. I would have been extremely happy with that. So gifted a position there, but I think I've earned that really with the very consistent driving and keeping it nice and safe as we go through to the final corner now. You can see in the mirror, and we're going to see that P6, I think P7 goes for a dive onto P6, and you're going to see it in the mirror. He just sideswipes him, and we're going to watch that back after. Now, the Ford was flashing at me when I was already past him in second corner, and when you watch what he did after in highlights, you're going to see it was not a very nice move. But we managed to take P5, another 1 minute 59.1 without really any slipstream, so a nice solid lap to end the race, and a very solid race, to be honest. Drove pretty much perfectly all the way through there. I'm very happy with that. It's just a shame that we didn't qualify in the top 5, because we could have been battling for that win in the race, I think. But let's have a little look at the highlights. This was the overtake on lap 1, going through turn 1. I seen him going very narrow, so went round the outside. I was going to undercut at that point, but seeing that I wasn't able to do it, so tried to hold it round the outside. He squeezed me a little bit, but gave me enough space. We get the better exit from the corner and put ourselves up 1 position straight away. So a nice move made very early on in that race. So let's have a little look at the next move now, as we're going to have a little look at the move that I think it was, he missed his braking going into the corner. You're going to see now as we go up the hill and going into the braking now. P11, he misses braking, turns it into like a dive overtake, but I think he knew that it was just avoidance really. It wasn't an overtake, it was just avoiding hitting me. Luckily I seen that coming in the mirror and avoided that instance. So next one was a move where I seen the two drivers in front of me battling. I decided to take a very tight line through there and try and get a really strong exit, get them on power very aggressively, trying to control the rear, but PA gets onto the curb and sideswipes into me. Luckily, I actually saved him there, and luckily he didn't give me a penalty or wipe me out of the race, so I got away with that one. Fortunately, the game didn't give anyone a penalty, so that was one lucky moment in the race. Next up, we had the move straight after that corner, pretty much the last move we made on Matty. You can see picking up the slipstream. Decided I was going to go down left there, decided to tuck back in, go back into the slipstream, then pull out now, and then try and brake as late as possible and just get the car up on the inside. Matty gave us plenty of room there, very fair driving by Matty, as I expect from Matty. He's a very good driver on the game, so he's very clean, and I pretty much knew that he was going to give me space there, so it's nice when you come up against drivers that you know are going to give you the space once you're making the move. Next up, we had the move on IA Racing. This was towards the end of the race. Obviously, this we're going to show you now how we were actually side by side. You can see we actually got a much better exit from the corner, going side by side, giving him plenty of space on the corner, more than the car's width, and a little bit of contact there, but nothing massive. And then trying to take a nice tight line, but trying to brake as late as possible, giving him plenty of space on the outside. But he turned in too early and clipped my car. I don't really understand why he was flashing me at that point. It was really strange. I don't get it, to be honest. He had no right to be complaining at that, especially when you watch what he did to P6 after P6 obviously was in P2 and lost that position. But look how far back he is at this point. Now, he's complained at myself, but watch this. From nowhere near him, brakes late, slides into P7, hits him, carries on, takes the position, doesn't give that back up. So that is the he complained that the move I made, which was 100% fair, but that in my opinion was not a fair move. He wasn't even close in the braking zone. I think it was a 50-yard board, and he wasn't even anywhere near the back. He just slid straight into, he used the other car as a brake basically, so not very nice to see. Not the best driving I've seen ever, but anyway, we came away with a very good result. I think we picked up about 1,900 points, which wasn't particularly amazing, but we only had a chance to do 2 races. A lot of other people obviously had a lot more chance to pick up big points in the races that were on the day before, and also if they didn't get a good result in the first few, they had more chance to do it. So I was quite happy with that. It was a shame that I didn't qualify better, but the qualifying let me down, but the race made up for it, I think, getting myself back up to P5. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed that video. Make sure you give it a thumbs up if you've enjoyed it. Make sure you subscribe to the channel if you haven't already subscribed, and click that notification button so you don't miss any future videos. Thanks again for watching, everyone. I'll be back very soon.